2023 NBA G League champs, the Delaware Bluecoats.
Welcome back, everybody, for a special edition of the Bluecoats Beat. Listen, it's time to get your coats on like you do every third Thursday, but today it's the interview series, and we've talked about this in the beginning. Tony Cutillo, Coach Joe Richmond, representing the Bluecoats, and what we do is we talk powerful positivity. We talk about stories within the game of basketball and outside the game of basketball. And today, the guest that we have is not only an ambassador of the game, but the actual president of the G League itself, but also so much more than that. And we're going to get to that a little bit. So let me introduce you to a former NBA athlete, played for obviously the Vancouver Grizzlies, the Hawks, the Trailblazers, the Kings, U.S. Olympic gold medalist in 2000, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and NBA G League president, Mr. Shareef Abdur-Rahim. Shareef, thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Tony, Coach, thank you for having me.
Oh, man. Hey, Tony, first you left out, and he graced the cover of Slam magazine.
That's right. That's right.
That cover was fire. He had the basketball back like this. See, I'm a fan. I'm a fan first, Shareef. I'm doing this podcast stuff later, but I'm a fan first.
And the one, that one, the 96 draft one, all those keep me cool. So even, my son that's like 21 and all his friends, they appreciate all the rest of the stuff they don't care about. Those Vancouver jerseys and those two photos keep me cool. So no doubt.
That was fire. Go ahead, Tony. That was fire.
No, man, it's fun. I like that because I forgot all about that. So I'm glad you brought that up because now I remember, because I'm just like you, Coach Joe. I'm a fan of the game as well. We're around the same. I'm a little younger, but I still go back and I remember, we were talking off air with Shareef about that, that Vancouver Grizzlies jersey. And I remember when that came out and that kind of caught people's fire. And now all of a sudden, with all the kids want to do the throwbacks and things of that nature, that's obviously one of the most important ones that they like. But first of all, we just want to thank you so much for coming on the Bluecoats Beat. Having your experience and obviously expertise is truly an honor. And, looking over it, make sure you go check out www.shareefabdurrahim.com because, like I said, he's not only the NBA G League president, he does so much. And one of those things, Shareef, is athlete advocacy. And, you speak a lot about that, advocating for today's athletes. And because of your experiences and because of your trials and tribulations, I mean, when did you start advocating for the athletes of this generation? And what has been some of the powerful feedback you've received already?
Well, I view it more as like paying it forward, right? I think guys that, came before me, the Magic Johnsons, Isaiah Thomas, Junior Bridgmans, those that I've looked up to and come across. Now I work here at the NBA, the Joe Dumars, all those that were before me that, did it really well and was successful. Did that probably in a different way than we do it now. And, we narrate our story via podcast, post and websites and so forth. They sat down and shared it with me directly. So that, that's where it comes from. It comes from a space of my experiences, good, bad, and different, what I'm learning, what I have learned, being able to share it with this generation. And then in many cases, learn from them because what this generation is going through, what they're doing, what they're learning, something special. So that's, it comes from that place. I can't escape, being an NBA player. No matter where I walk down the street, somebody may remember me, has been a huge part of my life. So I don't try to escape that, but I want to be able to, in these next chapters of my life, share, how we can evolve and how we can grow, all the other things that, athletes and NBA players in particular have to offer.
Yeah, paying it forward, right, Coach Joe? We know all about that, right?
And it's so funny that we have, and I'm coming from this as the ambassador of basketball for the Delaware Bluecoats. People ask me all the time about, how are you the ambassador of basketball? How does that come apart? And it's because I truly love the game, and I am a little up there. I'm a little more mature. I try to look young, but we have the reason that why Shareef is the perfect person to ask about the advocacy. But I don't know I know you got to remember this, but he also covered another magazine called Versatile. They did the scout report on him. They talked about how versatile he was. So this all leads right into that. And on the cover of that magazine, when you talk about this generation, I think it was so amazing that it was him, because on that cover was him, Stephon Marbury, and Allen Iverson. All game changers at that time. And people don't want to give them that credit. I don't know if they do or don't. I'm not in all them circles. But when Shareef came in, he was something different. He was something special. So being an advocate, I can see it because he can relate, because he was that guy. He was that guy that everybody's talking about. If it was social media then, he would be what's they call certified. You know what I mean? That's how he was then. So I'm looking at it and saying, I'm just saying, because I've been in his presence many a times, never got to communicate or conversate with him. But I just want to tell you, not only as the ambassador of basketball for the Delaware Bluecoats, and here as I sit today, the only individual in the league with that title, I'm honored to be on this podcast with you, because you have done so many out-the-box things for the league. So the asking about the advocacy was just perfect, because you fit every box that needs to be dressed in doing so.
Thank you.
Yeah, so true, man. So true. And you talked about you can't escape being the NBA player, right? Because it's something that we always do. You can't escape it. It was your career. That's exactly what you did. It's how you came in the league. Looking back, third selection in the NBA draft. I look at these NBA drafts and you see the first interviews. And sometimes I think it's kind of the wrong time, because your mind's really not focused. So I'm just curious, first went through your mind, and what was your actual mindset, when you hear your name called and you get drafted third overall?
Look, I'll be really honest. Like, the time went so fast. From the point where Commissioner Stern called my name, and I get up the stage, I was like walking up the stage, like, okay, don't trip. Before that, hug my parents, hug my mom, my dad, my wife now. The next thing I remember is being back at the hotel, and my mom had this really cool picture of me, her, my brothers and sisters took a picture in the lobby of the Meadowlands Marriott. Like, that's the next thing I remember. Like, the whole press circuit and everything. I know it's probably like a thing like, wow, I made it. It went so fast. Day later, I was in Vancouver. So it went so fast, but it was so much joy. I remember Stephon, he sat up and cried, and he talked about, because he had come from a family of like basketball players. It was like, this was like a path for him. And like for me, he probably go 24 months earlier. Like, I was like a kid from Georgia that the fact that I was there, like an out-of-body experience, if anything.
Yeah, it's funny how you say it goes so fast, right, Coach O? Because it's like you work up to that defining moment. And then all of a sudden, like, boom. What just happened, right?
And I'll say this, too. Like, it was a very different time in that the NBA for me was a dream. I wanted to be a very good high school basketball player. I wanted to play varsity basketball. I wanted to play, big-time Division I. Those were goals. The NBA was a dream. And I think we have kids now, because they're closer to it. They can watch every game on. They play and work out against NBA players. Like, it's closer to them. So they have a better gauge of them being there. So it's almost like expected. Whereas for me, like, and I think my generation, it wasn't, it just wasn't that close. So like I said, I was just so overjoyed. It just felt like I was just floating. And the next thing I remember, I was like sitting, literally, like that's the literal feeling. Like I was just like, somebody else was having this experience and I was watching it. And then the next thing I remember, I'm sitting and my mom still has this picture in our home of us taking the photo.
So now you just confirmed that is true, that people say they have that out-of-body experience. Like it was in your body, outside your body, watching your body go through all of this.
In the commissioner's hand, all of that.
But you mentioned something about your family, your parents, the whole nine, kissing your mom, they hugging everybody, doing that. And back then, it just wasn't this juggernaut of social media that it is now. Even though we know your parents had a lot to do with all this, the maturation of who you are as a young man. You can just tell by the way you carry yourself off the court. You've always been like that in almost every interview I've seen you in. But what do you think are some of the challenges that parents have now that your parents didn't have to deal with? And I know social media being that number one thing, but from seeing it from your perspective, from all the levels that you've been to now, the president of the G League, to even say it at this level, for someone that played at that level, played in the Olympics, on the cover of Slam and everything, everything. So your parents had to get everybody coming after them.
I think two things. I think one, and I think this was, somewhat not at the same level for my parents' parents. It's like we deal in information. So who and what are the trusted sources of information? Probably at that time it was you wanted to be able to trust your high school coach. My high school coach was like the very important person. So that was the trusted person. That was the information that you were dealing in. And like what was where were the right camps to go to? The stakes were a lot lower. Where were the right camps? Classes to make sure you took so you qualified, who could help you get the SAT prep. That was the information you were dealing in at that time. What was the right summer program and camp to go to, those things. I think now, obviously, the stakes are a lot higher, for young people. Are they truly on the draft? Are they truly on a draft NBA track, the right schools for the right reasons? So that information and parents being able to really decipher what's the right, if they don't know what's the right information. And then I think in addition to that, and what is directly connected to that, is the expectation. And I think expectations are so, again, it's the end of my year at Cal, I was, kind of the early end of one and done. My parents had no idea, no expectations of me going to the NBA. None. And by the end of the year, I'm sitting down with my dad and we're having this conversation. I'm sitting down with my mom and we're having this conversation. You can't go. And it was more from a place of you think you're ready to go to the NBA? Those guys are big. It was that. It wasn't oh, wow, go. It was more of you think you're ready to do that? I don't know. It was us convincing ourselves. I think the expectations now, and so much at such an early age for young people, that's a hard one for the parents to manage as well.
No, because Shareef, and I don't know your AAU background, and AAU plays such a big part now. I ran an AAU program for 5 years, and the reason I stopped the program is because of parents. Just let your kid be a kid. I get it from these parents now that even come to the G League tryout for their kids, and they want to have a say-so. They want to talk to this person. And Shareef, the funniest thing I always say to them is, hey, did your son go to your job interview and have a say-so?
It's not just the patience as parents and everything. It's not, I have children, just my level of patience to get out of the way and let them go through what they have to go through. You only kind of involvement my dad had in my summer basketball experience was he knew the guy that ran the recreation program that had the AAU teams. And in the 8th grade, he took me to the gym. My son is going to play for you. Take care of my, look out for my son, make sure he's doing the right things. Don't let him do this. He's not, these things. Okay. And I mean, in 8th grade to when I graduated high school, if he came to, because he was working, if he was able to make 10 games, he made 10 games, meaning my dad, he was there, but couldn't come to every game. And that was it. And from time to time, he would call the coach and check in, and that was it. So sometimes, and I'm all for, I'm the parent. I want to be at every game, but supporting. But I think that's a really good thing. It's important if you can do that. But I think also you have to be able to be patient enough to know what's going to happen. And the kids are in the right places. They're going to get the right information. They're going to get the right ethics and work approach and all those things that it'll work for them. It'll happen.
Yeah, you mentioned patience, such a huge word. And I, Coach Joe coaches, I coach, obviously, we know your background and patience is such a big thing. And one of the things I want to ask you about is kind of life after the NBA. And because that takes a lot of patience, right? So once you decide to retire, it's how hard was that transition to everyday life or a career that spanned over 12 years? What was your first move? What were you thinking? Was it ever a time where you reflected and was man, maybe I really wasn't ready to retire? Or maybe you were. What was going through your mind at that time?
My right knee got really arthritic, so I didn't have a choice but to retire. I couldn't go anymore. So that part of it, the decision part was made for me, so that was easy. In addition to that, I got really lucky. Jeff Petrie, who was running the teams at that time, he and Wayne Cooper, the assistant general manager or the vice president, and Jeff was the president. They asked me to stay with the organization, kind of mentor and coach and be around. That helped. I would work with the guys, go lift weight, ride the bike, and try to stay in shape. I was still on the NBA schedule of, going to the games and doing. For those first couple of years, I was still in that kind of mode, right, in that rhythm. That really helped me. It gave me the space and time to start thinking about what else I wanted to do. And I was 31. I thought I would play another 5 years at least, right? And that just gave me the time. I spent a lot of time in the organization, going around and talk to different people I hadn't even met before at that time. And that just really helped. That helped my transition. And, from there, I, went on and finished my undergraduate degree and did some other things. Got a master's But those things, it was difficult. The things I missed most was like the competition, and not like believe it or not, like I miss training, I miss like being like working to be preparing for a season or being in a season. I miss the competition. I miss the time in competition with the guys playing, being in close moments and those sort of things. I was, at that point I was married. I had my children, so like the stereotypical life of what people think NBA life is. I didn't, that stuff. I didn't, I was over that. But I still miss like playing. I wish I could, I live in, New York. I wish I could like go over to Seton Hall or St. John's and like play pickup, in the summers with their guys or something. So
never lose it. You never lose that itch, right, Coach Joe? You never lose that itch to want to play again.
Not at the level he played it at. Yeah.
No, definitely not.
You talked about those that came before you, the Junior Brighams and individuals of that nature. I know you've created some unique relationships, and being in this game, I tell people, basketball, we use the word family a lot in sports in general. You get into it, they like a family, not just teammates and things. Because you get around players, you meet their kids, their kids and your kids, you go to this, that, the third. What stands out in your mind? What was that moment, or what was that? When did Shareef Abdur-Rahim say, "I arrived in the NBA"? What was that defining moment that say, yeah, like you and your mom and dad, y'all was like, "Are you ready for this?" What time happened in the NBA that you knew, yeah, I belong here?
Well, I think the moment was like, wow, I'm in the NBA was maybe third, fourth game of my season of my rookie year. We were playing in Chicago. I mean, this is like the really good. This is like Jordan Pippen, Horace Grant, Rodman, Chicago. This is like '96. I'm like, wow, like and the United Center is like electric. I'm like, man, I'm in the NBA. Like, wow. So that was one. I think another one was like playing the Knicks at home, and I go up and like just like routine, like get by. I mean, their team is like Oakley, Mason, Charles Smith. That's the front line. With Big Cat, and I beat somebody. I get to the hole and like Mason and Oak, they just like crush me, and I ended up like missing like 3 or 4 games with like a hip pointer. I didn't even know what a hip pointer was, right? But that was like, like that was like the first time me like really, guys talk about like getting hit or that sort of thing. Like that was my first time like really feeling, like the force of like NBA level guys. And I'm like, I'm 6'8", 6'9", man, maybe 220 pounds soaking wet. So that experience with the Knicks at home, and then like just being like that, it wasn't the game against the Bulls. It wasn't our first game, but it was just like, man, like the Bulls is a team, and I'm like, man, and then then they go away and you start playing, but like, yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely that was like my era of of prime watching, right? Those three-peat years, those late '90s, and you mentioned it. I mean, you had the Detroit Bad Boys in the late '80s, but then those Knicks teams that went to 7 games. I mean, Xavier McDaniel, like you said, I mean, those dudes knew how to really, really crush you. So it's like, welcome to the NBA, right? But speaking of outside the NBA, because while we really want to have you on, last few things I want to talk about is what you do outside the NBA. And I saw this great quote on your website. Again, we're talking to the NBA G League president, Shareef Abdur-Rahim. Make sure you follow www.shareefabdurrahim.com, and you can see all of his work outside of the G League. And one of the quotes I saw was, "True measure of success is in your character." And I wanted to ask you about that. Like, how do you utilize this message when you're working with the youth today? Because you do have the Future Foundation, right? Where you work with the kids. And character is so huge. Me, Coach Joe, talk about that all the time. I instill that in my own kids. I instill that in kids that I mentor. I mean, just speak on that success in your character. How do you kind of ingrain that into the youth of today?
Well, I think you have to try to exemplify it, right? You start by being the example, being an example of character, being about the right things and treating people the right way, how you show up, how you deliver, especially, in challenging times. And that's truly, I think it was Martin Luther King who said, like, the true measure of a man is not where he stands in comfort and ease, but in difficult times. So, you have to be consistent in that. And that's just the example. I think you start with the example, and then obviously spending time and trying to talk people through what it looks like. And it's one of those things, sports, like a big word is like coach. It's one of those things when you talk to people, like, what is coaching? What is character? But ultimately it's like, how do you do things and how you treat people and like how you, take care of the environment that you're in. Is ultimately like what we're talking about.
It's definitely not easy, right, Coach Joe?
No, and I tell you that it starts with leadership. One of our other great leaders in the G League, Malik Rose, who introduced me to the Delaware Bluecoats, who made me a part of this from day one out in the community. And when I first met Malik, I didn't meet him in the office. I didn't meet him on the court. I met him in the community. He said, "Joe, meet me here," and that's what we were doing in the community. And I love it through your foundation. I think is like the premise of who we all are as a G League. Because even here at the Bluecoats, we have neighborhood hoops. We have books and basketball. We have open gym that we allow the kids to come in and play, free of charge. And our partnerships with all the companies that are with our organization allows us to do that and to continue to feed into the young people. And I think them getting a taste of the G League firsthand in their city, I know in my heart here in Delaware and Wilmington has truly changed the culture in this area, and it's also educated them about who we are and what the G League is truly all about. And to see someone of your stature and your presence, because he says he can't escape basketball because he's 6'9". That's why, Tony.
Yeah,
he in the supermarket, somebody going down aisle 9 for no reason because he's 6'9" to find out who he is. And you know what? Shareef always had a presence about him. You go and look at his, I'm telling you, go look at those magazines. As many of people grace many magazines, but his presence, the way the angle, always this guy, all starts with that. We always talk about character and integrity. And in this game, those things go for us. Because when you can find those individuals with those characteristics, it's just what makes our league so special.
You nailed it. You talk about your present role and duties. Like, could you just quickly walk us through a day or a week as the NBA G League president? Like, you come into the office and boom, what happened?
Think about responsibilities a couple of different ways. One, it is caretaker, protector of the integrity of our league, and also have an understanding that it expands beyond just the confines of the G League, but it's also with our connection to the NBA, the WNBA, the 2K League, the basketball. Those starts with that. We want to make sure the integrity of our game, of our league, is in place. It's to then think and work and have ways to add value to the overall NBA. And that's in how our business is growing, that's in our game and our ability to have players that provide opportunity to them, for the NBA and develop for the NBA, our officials and so on and so forth. And then finally, like our players as well, that they have and continue to have a platform to grow, develop, to show their skills, or people in general. I should say people, because it's not just players that start. You have general managers, you have folks working in ticket sales, we have all of our officials, that they have the best platform, best place. And so with that, my day is everything from meeting around the business of the G League and partnerships. What's the strategy of how we want to grow the G League? Other basketball issues, something that went on in a game the previous night that we need to address, to meeting with our players. Like if we have players that are coming through New York and they want to stop out on us, we want to call and talk about the league. All of those are a part of meeting with our governors, the owners of the league, to talk about where our league is in. All of that is a part of it.
A lot of responsibilities. Coach Joe, you have any final thoughts for the NBA G League president, Shareef Abdur-Rahim?
No, I just want to say it's been an honor. I'm so thankful. Yo, he's so humble, man. I mean, I've been in the meetings with him out in Georgia. He's graced our beautiful facility at the Chase Field House. I've seen him sign autographs. I've seen him take pictures with people, and I know his schedules. He's got to be in and out, but he's been so humble and gracious to us. He's been a great leader, and I've always told you this, Tony. I don't have a job. I do have a responsibility, and you can see that's where it comes from right there. We have a responsibility to the cities and the communities in which we play in and who supports us, not just financially, but actually coming to the games and putting their bodies in the seats for us, and that's what we love more than anything.
Coach Joe, thank you. Tony, thank you. Coach Joe, thank you for that promotion of the Blue Coats and the NBA G League. And we'll have our next up game. The voting you're talking about is our G League next up game, which will be in Indianapolis this year during All-Star Weekend in the footprint of the NBA crossover. And we have some really, you'll see coming out over the next month or so, some really nice features in this year. But special team there is doing some great things in Delaware this year.
Well, from the entire Blue Coats organization, Heat Ratio Sports, and myself and Coach Joe, we greatly thank you for your time and your contribution to Blue Coats Beat. And I'll leave you with this powerful quote that comes directly from the man himself on his site. And I love it. And we'll get out on this. It says the greatest achievement in anyone's life is the person you become. It's not the awards. It's not the accolades you receive, but who you are and what you've done to help others that matters. It's huge. It's powerful. For everybody here, for Shareef, for Coach Joe, thank you very much. We'll catch you on the other side. Get your coats on and be ready for the next edition of the Blue Coats Beat.